Kakadosh, good morning. I wanted to share with you an incredible idea on the parasha that has to do with bincha uven bincha, your children and your children's children. Because in the Torah it says in this week's parasha, "Ulman tisaper beozne bincha uven bincha," in order that you should relate to your children and your children's children, everything that we've done in Mitzrayim, and everything that we've done, that you should know that I am Hashem. So it once happened that in North America, there was tons of snow. It was snowing. There was 80 centimeters of snow. The temperature was minus 20, and it was empty. And the yeshiva of Torah and Torah V'dat, the Bachurei Yeshiva, they were in the rooms. They weren't going to go out of the dormitory to go to the Bet HaMidrash. So what happened is after 2 days, they thought to themselves, three people of the yeshiva, listen, tomorrow is the Shiur Klali of the Rosh Yeshiva, right? Rav Shlomo Hyman. They said, what's the Rosh Yeshiva going to do? Because they already knew that he was going to do everything in order to go to the yeshiva. So they said, listen, let's try to see what happens. So they come, right? And they were afraid with what? He's going to go to the yeshiva and there's nobody going to be there. So they said they're going to do Mesirut Nefesh. They're going to come and they're going to go. And Hashem should help. So they went and they start going. Mamash, they were able to get there. And what happens is they go into the Bet HaMidrash. The Bet HaMidrash is empty. Yeah, so the three of them are just waiting there. And all of a sudden, exactly at the time of the shiur, they hear footsteps. Who is it? The Rosh Yeshiva. And he comes in and he's all white. Yeah, it's still snowing, like all white. But his face was always shining like always. The Rosh Yeshiva, he looks, he smiles at the three people. He goes to the Aron HaKodesh, he goes up to the stand like usual, and all of a sudden he comes and he gives his shiur as if there's hundreds of students like always. And he starts screaming, this and that, like always. And, you could see that it's all red. And once in a while he comes and he starts banging on the stender like he always does. Yeah, you understand? So he finishes, and all of a sudden the Bachurim, they come to the rabbi, and they say, Rabbi, right? At the end of the day, we're only three Bachurim, right? We're three students. Why do you have to scream so much? You could have even said it whispered, and it would have been enough. Why are you screaming? Why are you screaming? So the Rosh Yeshiva, he comes, he bends down and he tells them, do you think I'm giving the shiur only for you? He says, you're mistaken. I'm giving the fire of the Torah to you, to your children, and to your grandchildren, and to everybody else as well. To your Talmidim and Talmidei Talmidim. Why? So if not, even if they're not here right now, how are they going to hear? I have to scream. That's how they're going to hear. What does this mean? This means it says that this story was actually given by one of the students. And he says in New York, and he says there were a lot of mothers, right, that used to pray that their children should always learn by him. A child that learned by him never forgot the Torah. The one that was most able to come and to put all the love of the Torah, everything inside, right, was all because of that. When they once asked him, what is the secret to his success, to instill so much love in the children, he always used to say this story. I was one of those three students. And therefore he says, since I was one of those three students, I always remember that I'm not actually coming and teaching the child. I'm teaching the child and all the potential that comes out of the child. I'm teaching his students and his students' students. And I don't just see one person. I see generations afterwards coming from this one person. And that's the secret to my success, why I have so much heavenly help, siyata dishmaya. The Baal Shem Tov explains in the pasuk, Leman tisaper beozne bincha uve'micha asher tilalti. He says, why is the obligation put on the grandfather? He says, answers the Baal Shem Tov, that there's a very important message on the importance of the chinuch, of educating in our children. And he says the Torah is hinting us that the handing over of this torch from one to another has to do with the grandfather. When a father comes and he sees, right, that he sees in his son, right, to do with his grandson, and then the great-grandson, and continue going, so then the chinuch is something completely different. But he says, but if he only sees, but it's not only even him, it's on everything. He sees the love, he sees everything that you're going to instill in them. And he sees hala, he sees the continuation. He doesn't see it just stop right there. He sees it continue. Right? So he comes and he says, you should actually understand that every single child is a pikadon. Every child is a collateral, which means that they're a guarantee. I'm going to tell you, take this and watch over it. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does with every single child. He comes and he tells you, I'm giving you something. Watch over it. Be very, very careful. It's this potential that you have inside is the potential of continuation of generations and generations and generations. And therefore, you have to take care of him. You have to understand what's going on. You have to understand because it's not just one person. It's all of generations, right, that are continuing going. Okay? So this important message is also for the child himself. When he starts becoming older, the parents have to actually tell him the same thing. And he has to tell his child, don't think that it's just for you. You've got thousands of generations that preceded you that we gave you the torch. You're the one that has the torch now. Continue giving it to your child. That he could give it to his child, and he could give it to his child, and continue going for generations and generations. Moshe Rabbeinu, he wanted to do this, and that's why he went and he said to Paro, we're going with everybody. The Yisach Moshe comes and he says, you know why? He comes and he says, why did he start saying with our youngs? He says, you're going to start with the youngsters. That is the continuation of all the generations. Then it's a chag for Hashem. It's a chag for Hashem when we go with our youngsters and we're going in the same path of our elders. And we continue that Masoret and we continue with that. Just like the Rabbi Panovich used to say, a child without parents is called an orphan. But he says, but if he doesn't have parents that continue the Masoret, so then it's going to be a nation of orphans. We also have to have. We have to understand that we're not orphans. We have to continue. We have to continue growing. But that's what we have to actually instill in every single one of our children to understand they have the torch. We got the torch from our parents, and they got it from their parents, and we continue going. Continue handing over the torch so that we continue with the Masoret. Don't think that you're only teaching this child. You're teaching this child and his children and grandchildren and continue going according to the way that we're actually going to act with these people.